I used to take 2 weeks before I would introduce a dog behind the bar fence. Now, probably 3 or 4 sessions is ideal. But what it's doing is it's making the dog forward focused and understanding that the only thing you're allowed to bite is what's forward. These guys that are simulating being backups are off the menu, whether they're wearing bite suits or what. It doesn't matter.
If every dog was perfect and every dog was strong and forward, and then we would never need fence work. We wouldn't need to test on prosthetics. We wouldn't have to have hidden sleeves. Every dog would just be perfect, and they would see the bad guy and they'd latch on, and it would be awesome, and we'd all go home and tell stories.
Welcome to Police Canine Radio. Rich, what's going on?
I think we're going to jump right into it because today we have good stuff going on.
You know what? Before we get going, one mistake that I've been going over in my head all day. I should have opened up a child care facility in Minnesota. I would not be sitting here today.
I spell learning.
I bet I could do it better than that sign.
I think that sign's been since repaired.
Yeah.
I think somebody went in there and scratched in an R. It's not the leaning center anymore.
Holy man. And I look at the sign maker too. It's like didn't the sign maker go, you sure you guys want it like this?
I bet the sign maker said, I'm not getting $1 million out of this deal.
Yeah.
I'm not correcting your spelling. That's on you.
And how long was that sign up there without anybody like, hey, anyway,
yeah, you digress.
I digress.
Hey, we got a cool guest, and for us, we have not had the opportunity to work with our next guest, but we've seen the cool thing now is there's so much social media out there. There's videos, there's seminars. We're seeing a lot of this guy's work. We have Eric Good with us today, and a lot of the work that we've seen is fence related, and obviously we're going to talk about the fence work.
One quick thing, I forget this every podcast. We're actually going to get some video from Eric. And we're going to post that on our YouTube channel. So if you're listening to this on one of the platforms, on Apple or whatever, Spotify, you can see this on YouTube, and then we'll have some videos that'll actually demonstrate some of the things he's talking about.
Yeah, because we like a lot of what we see, and I think for us, there's a learning curve. We just haven't worked it, and we kind of want to hear about it. Eric, we're going to let you introduce yourself. Tell us kind of how you got into the dog world. What you're doing now, and then we'll go into some questions. But before we do, we just had Kingdom Canine on, and it sounds, have you guys worked together?
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like he's making some prefab fences that would augment what you're teaching. So anyway, it's a small world out there in the dog world. So
yeah, it sure is. So, well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Glad to be here and to meet you guys and talk about this stuff. Love talking about dogs, but yeah. So I got into police work a little over 20 years ago, and that led me into dogs. I had no intention of really going to canine, but what drew me to canine was they were the proactive guys out there chasing people, getting bailouts and going out and finding them. So that led me into canine, and I've been very fortunate. I'm working my 5th dog now, and seen a lot of things, and good and bad. And I'm fortunate to travel the country now and teach police canine handlers from coast to coast. Just canine was a way to be out there and chase bad guys and have fun. When I started, we did not like the training part of stuff. We wanted to be out on the street, using the dogs to find people and bite them if necessary, but we didn't want to be at the training field. We didn't care much about certification.
not even for long sins?
No, I mean, it's cool, but it's
Took you
end
away
of the
from
day,
work.
we want to be out on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were the guys that barely certified and kind of by design. We wanted our dogs, in our mind back then, thought that if we had a dog that barely certified, that meant him a better street dog. And very fortunate that we had some really good trainers before me that passed information down, and we were good at getting dogs to bite people on the street and getting dogs to find people. Tracking was our big thing, but we struggled in certifying and control and obedience. We didn't care about that stuff. So now it's been like a complete 180, and we're doing things different, and it's a lot easier and a lot more fun, and we have more success, and our dogs are under control. So
Here's a good
that's
question.
been a big change.
Here's a good question for you, and this is one that comes up in police canine folklore. Does control on your dog mean that your dog is weaker?
Absolutely not.
Do you hear that in your travelings around teaching dog stuff? Is there a concern with your consumers that if you give their dog too much control, that they're going to lose their ability to do apprehension work or search work for that matter?
Absolutely. And I think that came from a time when the way that we got the control was just straight up ground and pound.
Yep.
And some of the dogs couldn't handle it. Nowadays, we're teaching the dogs much better. We're operant in our training, and we use food and positive reinforcement and all these things that help the dogs learn, and we're not having to beat up dogs, and so we're not suppressing them. So I think you can have very, very high levels of control and still have all the power you need and more. I think by gaining control, you actually get more power.
Eric, what was the catalyst for you guys to make that change? And what did you have an epiphany along the way when you went from your other way of thinking to like, okay, now we can start focusing on control and integrating it properly?
So good question. The catalyst was actually I met a civilian dog trainer named Mike Lorraine. The guy's phenomenal. He's a brilliant guy. Ran into him at the vet, exchanged like Instagrams. And then I started seeing some of his posts like a year later where he's training some police dogs. And I was seeing stuff and going, wow, that's really nice. Super clean outs, really fast recalls. So I called him up and said, hey, what are you doing? I want to learn this. And I went up and learned from him. He lived about an hour from me, and I was up there, 5 nights a week, including my nights off, just learning from him. And we learned how to obtain the control and then increase power at the same time. So just seeing it was a big thing for me, because I was of the belief, like we talked about, that if you had that control, your power would suffer. But then when you see people that are actually doing it, I'm a big guy. Show me. If you can do it and you can show me you can do it, then I'm in. And he showed me for sure. And he's actually where the bark fence originated as of what it is today, as far as being adapted towards police canine.
We had a post on Instagram recently. It was just a clip of a conversation that we were having during one of our podcasts, and we brought up the Keeler method. It came up in conversation, and we were talking about aversive training, the aversive training that we did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, where there wasn't much reward at all, if any. And we had several people that were like, yeah, times have changed. Good for us. We're learning, we're moving forward. And then we got hammered by a few people who were along the lines of pretty much, if your dog can't take an ass kicking, it has no business being a police dog. And not taking an ass kicking from the suspect, but if your dog can't take an ass kicking during training, then one, are you even a trainer? And two, like, how's your dog going to learn to deal with life? And I know you, Greg, you wanted to talk a little bit more about kind of a deeper dive into Keeler, and we don't want to regurgitate the whole book and all of that, but I think and none of the three of us, I assume, and I will get to this point, none of the three of us are opposed to an aversive when it's necessary.
Yeah, it's needed.
I assume, Eric, you're in that.
Absolutely.
You're willing to give your dog a correction when it's needed?
Absolutely.
I think, and what we were talking about earlier is it's probably not the best way to teach a dog something right off the bat.
Sure.
But it's a good way to hold a dog accountable for something that it already knows. And that's pet dogs, police dogs, service dogs, duck dogs, like whatever it is. Like if we can teach them and make it enjoyable for the dog to learn, and then use an aversive to hold them accountable when they, same like parenting, right? Like, I mean, it seems so commonsensical, but man, it hit some nerves with some people. And I'm sure most of those people were over 50.
Well, that's kind of like an old school KMPV theory, the KMPV dogs are supposed to be super tough, and I love them. Those are the dogs I'm looking for. But the Dutch, if they believe if the dog can't take a beating, then he shouldn't be a police dog. And I'm okay with that, but that's not every dog. And there's not enough dogs like that
Yeah.
anymore. So we need to get better at training, and we need to train dogs better. And, you know, to be honest, it's not fair to the dog either. If we can train them, like you said, and teach them what we want them to do, and then correct them if they disobey something that they understand, they choose to be disobedient, then we get a lot further. And the dogs understand it, and we don't suppress the dogs, you know, and that's where we're not losing power with the control, because the dog understands why he's being corrected.
Hey, we'd like to welcome our new sponsor and old friend, Blackjack's Leather. Blackjack's is the true definition of a mom and pop shop. They're out in Illinois. Richard, the owner, is somebody that we work extensively with. They make leather leashes, leather collars, biothane. We get a ton of biothane from them. Biothane 3-foot, 6-foot, 20-foot, 30-foot leashes. All kinds of colors. I know everybody that's listening to the podcast is into the tactical with the greens and the coyotes and the blacks. But if you have a pet dog at home and you want your dog to be a little flashy, we love their long line biothane leashes. There's blues, there's pinks, there's oranges, yellows, all kinds of colors. Add a little flash to your program. And they really care about canine handlers. They're big on making sure that the equipment that they sell is safe for the dog and safe for the handler, and exactly what you're asking for. Blackjack's Leather, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. Can you talk a little bit about that? Can you talk a little bit about how, if you are too aversive without a clear understanding, like what can happen to the dog's psyche, as opposed to gaining control while still opening the dog up?
And let's define for the listeners what aversive means. Let's even break that down, because there could be some listeners that go in with aversive. Like, I don't even.
Yeah,
what does that look like?
I mean, I guess for me, it's simply as any kind of correction that makes the dog feel uncomfortable, and that could be verbal, bad dog, knock it off.
Yeah,
all
positive
the way
punishment with a
to
pinch,
popping the leash,
e-collar,
smacking him in the head with a pipe. Like, I mean, there's all acceptable at one point in the world. Hopefully not still, but you know,
physical punishment,
throwing a chain at the dog, all those things, anything that makes the dog feel uncomfortable and makes them understand that they've been punished. Same with you, Eric? Are you in that same?
Yeah, I agree. I think the way that we're training dogs before is we were using corrections to teach the behavior, and you touched on it earlier, but it was sit and an automatic pop up into the sit. The dog never has a chance to avoid the correction. And that's going to make the dog afraid to do the behavior. If you're saying sit and correcting at the same time, the dog hears sit and they kind of like sit back and go, oh, here it comes. As opposed to sit, lure the dog with food, mark it, yes, and then reward the dog. The dog hears sit, and then they get excited. And then down the road, you tell the dog to sit, the dog knows it, understands it, and the dog doesn't sit, chooses to be disobedient. We apply some kind of pressure, and then we can even withhold the reward there. And then we try it again. You're free. Sit. Dog sits. Does it right? Yes. And gets rewarded. So they learn very quickly what benefits them in that way. And when we keep that even across the board, like just listen, you know, pressure. I think people overcomplicate pressure and make it so that dogs, they default into one behavior when they feel pressure, as opposed to pressure means you did something wrong, you didn't listen to what I said, and I want you to complete that task. Not just one thing, not just every time you feel pressure, I want you to down. No, I told you to heal, and you didn't heal, so that's why you got the pressure, so I want you to heal, right? So just using more quadrants of operant conditioning, you know, positive reinforcement, you know, adding something good, adding the reward, negative punishment, removing the pleasant stimulus. So if I tell the dog to sit and he doesn't sit, well, then he doesn't get his reward. You know, multiple quadrants of operant conditioning just make it so much more clear to the dog, and then consistency as well. That was one thing that we lacked back in the day is, you know, sometimes we tell them to sit, and sometimes we make them, and sometimes we let them get away with it and make excuses for the dog. Well, you know, he's not doing it right now because he's excited because there's a decoy out there. well, in that case, I shouldn't have given the dog the command.
Yeah, pick and choose your battles right there, and understand your dog's level of understanding. And just to touch upon that, like if you guys are out there, and this is the way I started, was I would walk along, and this is in the book, Keeler, and the Keeler haters or the Keeler lovers, the haters of us that the proponent, I don't know. Anyway, if you know, the way we started out was we would just say, we'd heel along, we'd say heel, it meant nothing to the dog. We'd do a right turn, pop, you know, heel. And again, it meant nothing to the dog. And that's how we started. Sit, boom, you know, you push down on the butt, push up on the leash. If you're starting that way and you're a handler out there and that's what your trainer is prescribing, understand there are much better ways to get there. If you're starting out with that kind of control, that kind of, you know, using aversives right out of the gate, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to squash the drive, as like Eric's talking about, or if you got the wrong dog, there's going to be counter control, which means handler aggression. That's like, who are you pushing up on? Like, you know, you're yelling at me things I don't know, and now you're trying to hold me accountable, and you're putting pressure on me. And so both are bad. You know, there's a certain amount of dogs that kind of do it, and that now gives fuel to justify those tactics. But yeah, there's just so many better ways nowadays to get there.
Well, and I think, Eric, what state are you in?
Florida.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but out here, vendors, and I'm one of those, sell dogs at a much earlier age than I ever got a dog in my first couple of dogs. Like my first couple of dogs were 3+, and they were who they were. There we go. They were who they were. They had already hit adulthood. They were set in their ways. They knew some stuff. It was my job just to keep up with them at that point. I had, you know, my first 2 dogs were KMPV dogs. It was my job to keep up with them. And there wasn't too much that I was going to do to squash them because they had already been through all that overseas. And by the time they came to me, it was kind of like that. You can, if you want, you can push, but I'm going to end up coming up the leash if you push too far. But I can accept a lot because that's how I was brought up. I don't know how many dogs from that litter failed out and didn't make it through the process. But I know my dogs were pretty resilient by the time I got them. And so when I went to the vendor that had the basic academy and the only obedience stance was yank and crank, the dog was capable of handling that because it had already been proven. Now we're selling dogs frequently, and I'm sure you guys have the same thing, where there's dogs coming to agencies at 12, 13, 14, 15 months old. You start popping those dogs around and they don't know what that is. I think you're far less likely to get a dog that's coming up the leash. You're really likely to shut a dog down for good. And especially mouths. I mean, mouths just, I know there's this kind of misconception that they'll go anywhere, do anything, run through fire. Yeah, kind of. But they're also really susceptible.
Sensitive.
And sensitive to like, hey, if you push too hard, I may not ever do this again for you. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, we definitely see some of that. Definitely younger and younger dogs. You know, I'm kind of the belief if the dog can't take the correction, it, you know, probably shouldn't be a police dog. I had a guy that I was helping out that his dog went through a whole canine school and came to me for some help, needed some power with the dog, and asked him, well, what did you do when your dog didn't out? How did you correct him? And he said, well, we vibrated him on the e-collar.
Ooh.
Like the dog's never felt stimulation. And he's like, no. And I'm like, and sure enough, do a couple tests, and I'm like, this isn't a police dog.
Wasn't meant to do the job, right?
No. So I do think the dogs need to be tough, but we need to be fair with them, especially with these young dogs, because if the dog is at that stage where he could go either way, and you ruin him because, you know, he just doesn't understand what you're asking him to do, that's pretty bad, you know.
And I think there's something to be said for a relationship, right? Like just plain like fairness, right? I mean, raising kids, working with employees, whatever it is, like why not teach the dog? And it sounds like we're all on the same sheet. Why not teach the dog how to do something where it gets to enjoy itself, and then later on, once you know it, then I'm going to hold you accountable. Then you can get in trouble for not knowing. But if I start my relationship off with you with you're in trouble and the dog doesn't even know what I'm trying to teach it, man, I just feel like you're straining the relationship right off the bat.
And that's where, like you said, the handler aggression stuff comes. Unfair corrections the dog doesn't understand. And that's sad to see when the dog starts becoming handler aggressive. It becomes a learned behavior when the dog wouldn't have been like that because of these unfair corrections.
Yeah, and we
sucks.
see handlers across the nation that have lived with a handler aggressive dog for years, and they hate it. You know, like you said, like the coolest thing ever is to go hunt down bad guys with a police dog. Man, if I have to jump in a car with my dog and I think at some point during my shift he's going to come at me, that takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, a lot of stress.
Yeah.
I had a dog like that for about 3 or 4 months. Ended up going back to the vendor. Vendor wasn't happy, but most stressful time of my life.
And I bet the vendor knew. That's why he wasn't happy, because now he has to try and sell that same sucker again.
Now he's got to deal with that dog too.
He's got to change his name and his birthday and try and pass that off to another agency.
100%.
Hey, so
but I would come home every night and fight the dog in my front yard. It was an all-out brawl and no sleep. You know, I feel for the guys that have handler aggressive dogs. I don't think that you should be working a dog that you have to worry about a bad guy in a backyard and your own dog.
Yep.
That's not a cool place to be.
And actually, before we move on, I want to hit on that. If you get a dog and perfect, I'm sure your dog was within warranty if you could send him back 3 or 4 months later. But if you get a dog and for the first month, your dog's eating you, like this doesn't have to be a project. And we just talked to Jay Nix about this. Like, we should not be buying projects from vendors. You're like, hey, he's really good. He just needs some help with the stairs. Hey, he's really good, but he likes to come up the leash every once in a while. Hey, he's great, but he kind of sucks on slick floors. You know, once you work through that, he'll be fine. Stop right there. I mean, unless you just love the dog and you're like, I'm going to make this work and I'm really good at, solving these problems, which most handlers admittedly aren't. Don't buy a project. Like, don't go out there and buy somebody else's failure that they haven't been. Like, if the vendor's good, they've probably already had the ability to solve that situation on their own. And if they haven't been able to solve it, then it's probably not solvable. Fair enough. I mean, I don't think that should be the handler's job. And most handlers aren't trainers.
I agree. I think those people that buy dogs and think that they're going to build dogs, they're going to overcome environmental issues, like, you're buying the wrong dog. You shouldn't be buying dogs like that. And if the dog is coming up the lead, looking at the handler funny, like turning around and growling when he gets in the kennel, like all those things, I think the vendor should be saying, the vendor shouldn't be taking them. They should be leaving them over in Europe and going, nope, I don't want them. Because as a vendor, I'm not a vendor, but as a vendor, I think it would be smart to go, I know what's going to happen. That dog's going to become handler aggressive if he isn't already, and he's going to come back to me.
Yep.
So don't take those dogs.
No, I agree. And I think this is a good segue into the fence work. Tell me if I'm wrong, but if every dog was perfect and every dog was strong and forward, and then we would never need fence work. We wouldn't need to test on prosthetics. We wouldn't have to have hidden sleeves. Every dog would just be perfect, and they would see the bad guy and they'd latch on, and it would be awesome, and we'd all go home and tell stories. That's not the case. Some dogs need more. They need to see more. They need to be built more. They need to be more man-oriented. They need to be more neutral around the team, all of those things. And it sounds, from watching the fence work, and neither one of us have ever gone to a seminar that you've taught, so we really want to learn more about it.
So, and for you handlers, there's some dogs that I call like a generalist. Like, it is that. Like, he bites a sleeve, then he goes out on the street and he performs perfectly.
Yeah.
Dream dog. Unfortunately, those dogs are few and far between, so we try to show them as many different pictures, so when they go on the street, they're like, this is a similar picture maybe I've seen in training, and they can connect the dots. And Eric, why don't you tell us how you're connecting these dots with your dogs?
So it's funny you say that, because I do believe that dogs need to see pictures, but since learning the bark fence from Mike Lorraine, I think they need to see less pictures, and there's a reason for that, because we're putting the dogs in like a really high level of intensity in their job and everything they do. So we don't have to show them everything. I think that they operate on such a high level of intensity that their prey drive and everything just takes over, and they know what to do. They know what to bite. They know. So we are showing them pictures of bark fence, but the main thing we're creating there is intensity and emotion, and then putting that into everything we do. I mean, a good example of that would be, I'm a big fan of like the first rep of something new. Let's say an area search. I want the dog to do that first rep with very high intensity. I want him to go in and bite super hard. I think as police canine trainers, a lot of us use too much like approximation and baby step things too much. But if we can teach the dog to be super intense, which we do with the bark fence, we teach him that he barks and then he bites afterwards with everything he has. And there's a process for that. We'll get to that. Now we just add something new before those steps, which is going to be odor. He gets in odor. That's new to him. He gets close to the decoy. He sees them. Now I tell him to do what he knows how to do, which is bark. And he knows after he barks, he bites with everything he has. So that first bite on an area search, the first time we paired odor with a bite on an area search, the dog's biting with everything he has. So if we compare that to the way we would do it in the past, we would have a decoy hidden. The dog would go out, maybe show a change of behavior and odor. We'll get close to the decoy. Let's say the decoy had a hidden sleeve on. Maybe the dog hadn't seen too many hidden sleeves. And now the dog sees them, looks at them, might be a little confused. And what would the decoy do?
Hopefully
He'd
nothing.
present his arm.
Yeah,
Hopefully nothing. And that's the idea with bark fence, is that we don't have to have the decoy do anything. But what does the decoy typically do? He puts his arm up horizontal, looks like a presentation, and then the dog goes, oh, I know this picture, goes in and bites.
Without intensity.
Without the intensity. And then you would praise the dog, work him into the bite, build up that intensity. The next rep will get a little better. The next rep gets a little bit better, etc. Well, that kind of carries over into how real bites actually used to happen for us. So we were very good at getting dogs to bite on their first try, but their first bite was not what we're seeing today. They would put teeth on skin. Like Greg said, there's exceptions. There's dogs that go out there and destroy people on their first bite, no matter how bad their training is. And we had some of those dogs. But most dogs, let's say, would go in, would bite, put teeth on skin, maybe not do much damage, not cause much pain to the bad guy, which is important. And then I remember the senior handler saying this to my first dog, oh, they'll get better. And they did. Every bite got a little bit better and a little better. By the time I got my fourth or fifth bite, the dog's crushing people. But that happened a lot faster back then. We're not getting as many bites as we used to. And we need dogs to perform on their first bite.
Hey, I'd like to thank one of our sponsors, Ray Allen Manufacturing. They've been engineering tactical and working dog equipment like harnesses, collars, leashes for military police for over 75 years. They are continuously innovating. I always like to say, this is not your dad's Ray Allen. They are always looking for the bigger and the better. We get all of our handlers now in the basic handler course deal directly with Ray Allen. We get our harnesses, leashes, tugs, e-collars, gloves, Rec Specs, Hearing Dog Pro. All of our good stuff comes from Ray Allen Manufacturing. Look them up, rayallen.com. I cannot recommend them enough. We only recommend people that we deal with, and these are good people, and they're in it for the right reasons. So because of that, rayallen.com.
I was going to say, and it might be very necessary that your first bite is the best one, right? Like maybe the next four are not so important. Your dog just needs to apprehend them, and the guy's pretty quick to give up. But we just talked about it with Jay. Like you can graduate your basic on Friday, and it happens a lot more often than you would think, that a handler goes out and gets into something on Saturday or Sunday, gets a bite, and their first bite is one day after the class. And if that's where they're learning to put teeth on people with some intensity, that could develop into a problem.
Absolutely. Or it's a handler that doesn't work in an area where they get a lot of opportunities, and it's been years since they come out of canine school, that dog needs to be even more prepared, and the training needs to be better for that dog. And there's a lot of people in the country like that don't get as many opportunities as maybe we do in South Florida, some areas in California. So the bark fence has changed that for us. Since the bark fence, our dogs are going in on the first bite and taking care of business. And we've been able to eliminate a little unwritten rule that we had, which was dogs weren't allowed to work gun calls until they had 4 or 5 bites. Because now we're confident that these green dogs are going to go out right out of canine school and take care of business. And I'm not trying to oversell anything here. I'm a big fan of the bark fence, obviously. There is no end all be all. It is not, you just do bark fence and your dog's going to go out there and crush everybody. It's a tool, just like muzzles, hidden sleeves, prosthetics, all those things that we've always done still need to be done.
But those tools, and I think is what and man, I really want to see it firsthand, but is what I'm hearing you saying is all those tools are proofing devices, but none of them raise intensity.
Yeah, in theory, yeah.
And the fence, I mean, it raises intensity once they're on it, and then the decoy has to do something to bring that intensity up. But the fence is creating intensity before the contact.
Absolutely.
I guess a door could do it. Well, I mean, if a dog is pretty motivated, is in odor, somebody's on the other side of the door, the dog's barking at the door, can get the odor, and there's enough air flowing through there that the dog's ramping itself up like that, but still a barrier. Like that barrier itself is getting the dog jacked up, the door pops open, and then, there's some motivation.
And that's a common thing we do, right? Like search, catch odor, behind the door, bark, swing it open, give a bite, or work the bark. How is the bark fence different from the traditional way we did it in a building search, like with a door?
So here's how I would do it. I would want barking on command. So we did that in the bark fence. The dog knows after he barks, he bites. And that the intensity, the frustration, the emotions that come to life while the dogs are barking carries over into the bite. So I'll set up a building search a little different than I did in the past. I'll have a decoy. I'll have the dog outside the door. Decoy comes out. In the beginning, it's in a suit. I don't really care. Dog sees him. Handler grabs the dog, tells him to bark. I get some barking. The dog runs into the building, goes into a room, doesn't close the door. After barking, and I'm not 1 or 2 barks, we're talking 20, 30 barks. Dog goes in, gets to push his way in the room, and self-reward. So that's the first rep. Pull the dog right out, duplicate the same thing. Now, after barking, the guy goes into the same room, closes the door, and now we send the dog in. And typically the dogs start hammering the door seams and sucking the air out of the rooms because of the intensity that the state of drive that they're in while they're searching is so high that we don't have to present door seams, right? Like they're doing it on their own. They already know how to do it. So they just need to want it more, right? So when he knows he's in that room and he pulls the air out from the door seam, if he starts barking on his own, great. If not, I go up in a system and I go through the same steps I go through in the bark fence. I grab him by the harness, tap him on the side, tell him to bark, 20, 30 barks, door pops, boom, goes in and bites. And then obviously we just start varying the doors and the dogs are going in with intensity and searching with intensity. So those first reps done with intensity, done way, way up here, as opposed to begging the dog to check door seams. Like, come here, buddy. And he checks the door seam and you see a little change in behavior and you're like, oh, what do you got, buddy? And you start amping him up.
Get him
out. You know what
there.
I mean? Like,
I hate that.
Yeah.
So Eric,
all that
before
goes
you go
away.
on, how does the bark fence, how is that different than doing exactly what you're talking about with a solid door?
So the visual part of it and being super close to the dog, and with a bark fence, as the decoy, I can bring out some more emotion by getting face to face with the dog and creating social pressure. So that boundary is crystal clear. So I can put my face right there. I can be somewhat threatening to him to bring out a little bit nastier bark, and then mark the barks that I like and pay that. I'm not necessarily looking to push the dog into defense where the dog feels threatened and like, real nasty, like snarling, lips curled, all that stuff. But if I can get the barking to become a little bit more intensity by putting social pressure on the dog, I'm going to do that, mark some of those barks, and then I'm going to see more of those barks, right? A little bit more.
So is it your decoy
intensity.
that's marking the barks, or you as the handler?
Yes.
The decoy.
The decoy is. So in the beginning at the bark fence, it's the decoy. And the decoy is so important. One unfortunate thing about bark fence is I see videos of people doing it, and the decoy work is rough. And it's not easy. I don't want to say flat. I think it's more of like too much help for the dog. So the dog's barking and the decoy is swaying and moving and constantly moving, and every bark they're giving the dog feedback. One of the main goals of bark fence is that the decoy is passive. So in the beginning, I will help the dog and get some rhythm going by first couple barks. I might flinch a little bit, and then I settle into completely passive to where I want to get, 20, 30 barks, and I don't give the dog anything. And then when I see what I really like, I mark it and then pay him.
So you're not rewarding the prey barks per se. You're trying to get more of a, let's just use the term fight or defense. I think we all know what we're talking about, the deeper, more serious bark. And then how is your decoy marking that particular bark that you're desiring?
So just a verbal marker when we're going to pay. I'll usually say something like, wow, and then stand up and pay them. That's one of the ways, right? Whether it's a hidden sleeve or pay them with a toy. I don't really care what I'm paying them with because we're marking it. And it's just an indirect reward for a behavior that I like. But I know police canine handlers want to see their dogs bite people. And so a lot of times I'm doing it with a hidden sleeve and not paying them with toys because I get it. They don't think biting the toy is going to carry over to the man when really we're creating a behavior here. We're putting it on command. We're marking it. The payment doesn't matter. So like with my dogs, we'll use toys more and it doesn't matter. But,
Because and I just want to clarify, because we have handlers that are month 2 into this and they're watching, and then hopefully they don't do this without some guidance from somebody who knows what they're talking about, but they're going to go replicate this. You're rewarding the intensity. So I agree. I would use the toy also, because especially if it's me and I'm trying to build intensity with my dog and I don't have anybody else there. Like I do like to kind of separate, like I'm not feeding him my arm, right? Like I do want to feed him a toy, but I'm just rewarding the intensity. I'm not doing air quote bite work. I'm building intensity in the dog and rewarding the intensity, because as you move away from the fence, the next thing that's going to happen that you were talking about is you're going to put the dog in the same type of situation, a search where you're going to ask the dog to show that same intensity with the bark and then present the bite after that anyway. So it's the intensity that you're really trying to build here.
Yeah, it's intensity that comes out through the barking, and the barking makes it more intense. So we're looking at the dog is looking at the decoy, not looking at a sleeve, not looking at a toy, right? And like
It's
nice focalization, right? And civil decoy. So typically t-shirt and shorts, especially here in Florida. And if I do have a hidden sleeve on, it's behind me or it's off and to the side, and making sure the dog is focused on me and that he understands that getting aggressive towards me as the decoy is what gets you paid. But yeah, it's the marking is very important, that there's a verbal marker. And that's a good thing you brought that up, because when they do it right and I say, wow, and then I stand up, that marks a moment. That mark allows me to remain passive until I pay them. If I didn't mark it, if I'm in front of the fence, and this is one of the problems I see, and the dog barked at me nice, and I just stood up and paid him, well, what's the dog getting paid for? He's getting paid for the decoy becoming active as opposed to the mark of the behavior we liked beforehand. So that's one thing I see wrong, is that people are just standing up and paying the dog instead of marking what they see. Another way to mark it is if we see what we like, we can use a duration marker, and I'll typically like yell at them, hey, and maybe smack the fence. That's a marker that says, I like what you're doing, but keep doing it. It's not a way to draw the dog to me. If the dog's looking at the sleeve off to the side, I don't do anything. I'm not going to do anything to attract his attention other than look at him and stare at him. If I go, hey, I'm over here, it defeats the purpose, right? That's like bad decoying. And it's, I'm probably going to mix this up. Then it's active decoy, reactive dog, when it should be the other way around. Active dog, reactive decoy.
When you're starting this process, do you try and limit as much equipment as possible? Like, you just want to make it about you, about the decoy and the dog?
Yeah. In the beginning, I'll usually start with one toy. And the first couple barks, it's going to be that prey barking. I'm going to elicit barking by creating a little bit of prey frustration. So if I have one of the big round pillows, I'll stand over top of the fence, make the dog miss, make him miss, and then squat down and put it behind my back, like on a sleeve leash. So it's hidden. Dog barks at me, I mark it, and then pay him. And very quickly, usually session 2, session 3, I'm flooding the inside of the fence with toys, equipment, and the outside as well. And that way, and I'm not holding anything. Dog barks at me, I mark it, and I pay it. And they learn it very quickly that it's not about the equipment, it's about the man.
Negative side effects. Do you end up with a dog that's a little more of a barrier problem in the back seat after this?
I haven't seen that. I am a big fan of not allowing dogs to bark in the car. And over the last, 7, 8 years, I started, if a dog starts barking in canine school in the car, a bark collar goes on them. And after canine school, typically the bark collar can go away and we don't have barking problems from then on. But you got to nip it in the bud early.
Yeah, I agree.
The barking in the car.
I hate it. I mean, and I switched agencies towards the end of my career, and I ended up in a passenger of a canine handler who has an incredibly loud shepherd, and we couldn't turn the turn signal on. The FTO, who was canine, actually told me, like, hey, don't use a turn signal. It freaks him out. I'm like, and I'm like, hey, how about we solve this problem? And he was like, hold on, rookie. I was a 46-year-old rookie at that point. So I had some ideas, and we ended up, working that out, but it was crazy. Like, he was driving around not being able to put his turn signal on. He couldn't turn his hazards on. Like, he couldn't, just his ambers, right? Like, that would cause the dog would lose his mind. I'm like, you don't have to live like this. Yeah, but I agree. I hate it. And I think there's nothing wrong with throwing a bark collar on a dog in the back seat in the learning phase. I agree. I'm not going to work like that. Hopefully you don't get to that point where that's an issue, but during training, I'm gonna extinguish that, because I don't want to live like that.
Yep, absolutely. And at the bark fence, we're teaching quiet as well, and that's a huge part of it. And actually, we really need to start there before you even get to the bark fence. Is the first step for me is quieting the dog up in prey. If the dog's barking in prey drive, you're standing out in front of them and you got a bite roll, and you're moving that around. The dog's back tied, and the dog's barking. That's not natural. So we have to quiet them up. Usually one session, and they're like, okay, I get it. Being quiet gets me my reward. If needed, I can correct them with a slip line. If it's really bad, slip line plus e-collar. I even use lemon juice sometimes, spray them in the mouth. Quiet, spray them with the lemon juice. Nice way to get them quiet. That works on like probably 40% of dogs. They have to close their mouth. They don't like the bitter flavor. So that's the first step before we get to the bark fence. Then when we get to the bark fence, we're trying to get barking. And every dog's different. If you see this dog has no problem barking, it might be a quiet fence for a few sessions. or we're going back and forth very quickly, and we're going to tell them to bark, and then mid-barking, quiet. So they learn the quiet, and then they also have that outlet.
Eric, when you
One of the
quiet
guys-
the dog, does the decoy kind of stop eye fucking the dog? Like, is there a little bit like where you're telling the dog that like, hey, I need you to be quiet? Does the decoy make that agreeable?
Relief pressure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. It was very hard for the dog not to bark if the decoy is staring him in the eyes and applying that social pressure.
So now with the bark fencer, is this something that you do regularly in maintenance, or is it just we're doing this in the early stages, and then now the dog is biting on the street, and now it's something that's kind of in there?
We might throw it in like once every other month, but really the skills are taught, the intensity is taught. We don't need to revisit it generally, and it's not a ton, even in the beginning phases. I'd say we have a 12-week canine school. I'd say we probably do 12 sessions, maybe 15 in the whole school. They learn it really quick. The barking's on command, quiet's on command, the intensity's there, and then we get away from the bark fence. And that's the most important part that a lot of people I think are missing. They think that they teach your dog to bark at a fence. Well, you have to generalize. You have to show the dog. We have to take this behavior everywhere, and there's not always going to be a fence. Most times there isn't, right? So
then you do start kind of showing different pictures at that point.
Yeah, so at that point, we want the barking on command. And like usually I'll do half a bark fence session. And then the decoy runs off and hides. And the dog kind of gets to pursue, loses sight of them, turns their nose on. And then once they see him, they pinpoint it. The handler will stop the dog, 4 or 6 feet from the guy.
Long line?
Stop him, tell him to bark.
Long line
Sorry?
or off lead?
No, just like a 6-footer or 15-footer.
Okay.
Not off lead, because if it's off lead, the dog's going to go right in the bite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's no fence here. It's just the guy hidden. So I want in the beginning the handler to stop the dog and get him to bark before he goes into bite. And that way I'm ensuring the intensity is paired with the area search or the odor part of it. And then very quickly that goes away. When I see that the dog is super intense and like everything he's got, he's trying to go into that bite, I'm not going to stop him and tell him to bark anymore. And it's just boom, right into the bite.
Once again, this episode is brought to you by Inukshuk Professional Dog Food. There's only one brand of dog food that we use and recommend. That is Inukshuk Professional Dog Food. Inukshuk was created for working dogs and continues to be the top choice for all working dogs, from hunting dogs to sled dogs, and of course, police canines. Whether it be detection or patrol canines, visit inukshukpro.com, or you can find all of the formulas on chewy.com. So if everything's done right on the front end, then the intensity is built for the remainder of the dog's working life.
Absolutely.
Are you seeing, so you're traveling a lot and doing seminars and, people coming out to you. Are you seeing that this sometimes punches holes in the dog's general ability? Like, do you see some dogs when they get behind the fence, they're just like, nope, I'm not. Or is it bringing dogs up that might have been failures without the fence?
I would say I'm not seeing it punching holes in dogs. Like, not too many dogs get back there and are like, oh, I don't really like this. I don't really see that often. It definitely brings dogs up. I mean, obviously genetics and selection are the most important thing. I always say I want a dog that doesn't need bark fence, but I'm going to do it anyways because I teach him so many skills, but it is nice to bring dogs up. I've had dogs that were really nice dogs that came from other agencies that had failures on the street, and they, good training. They come to me and they go, I don't understand why this dog isn't failing. And like, they look great, muzzles, hidden sleeves, prosthetics, crush it. And you go, let's do some bark fence. And you see, all right, the dog's lacking emotion. Everything's sporty and fun. There's no intensity. And then right after bark fence, and I'm not talking a 2-day seminar. It's not a magic pill. Like, you go to a 2-day seminar, that doesn't mean your dog's going to go out and nuke people. You got to continue with it. But like, one example, an agency by me, the guy came out 2 days a week for 4 weeks, and went out and took care of business after multiple failures.
I also noticed that in a lot of the videos, one of the beneficial side effects is a neutrality to cover.
Yeah.
How does the bark fence? I mean, I can picture it on my own, but can you explain how the bark fence helps that neutrality to cover? And obviously, it's because they're far more focused on the person that's on the other side of the fence. Is that just how it works? Like, there's so much focus there that the dog's like nothing else matters?
Yes and no. They are super focused on the decoy if you do it right, if you take your time. These 2-day seminars, they want guys behind suits next to their dog, day one. And we do it. We just expedite it a little bit. I used to take 2 weeks before I would introduce a dog behind the bark fence. Now, probably 3 or 4 sessions is ideal. But what it's doing is it's making the dog forward focus and understanding that the only thing you're allowed to bite is that. The only thing you're allowed to bite is what's forward. These guys that are simulating being backups are off the menu, whether they're wearing bite suits or what. It doesn't matter. That civil guy that's passive in front of you is the only thing you're allowed to bite. And it transfers over into the road, when we, generalize it and go out and have guys in bite suits as our backups, yelling commands, just like we do at the fence, just without the fence. And the dogs get it quickly. Like, all right, that's the only thing that's on the menu.
Okay. So are you not, once you do the bark fence and you feel like, okay, the dog's exhibiting the drive and he's picking it up and he's got more intensity, are you not doing prosthetics or covering the suit up with a blanket and trying to show those kind of things? Or are you just going, nope, now the drive's in place, the intensity's in place, all those things will kind of take care of itself?
No, I still do that stuff. I like to do it at the bark fence. So, I see where you're going. Like I said, not showing the dog pictures. We got to show them things like that, like fighting different things, fighting different surfaces, putting them in different situations. But,
and then how would you present the prosthetic with the bark fence? How does that look?
So there's a couple different ways. I have a trap door, so the main fence that's right between the dog and the decoy slides open. So if I put on one of the wearable arm and legged ones, and it's behind my back and I mark it, and then I can present it, and then the door opens and the dog comes forward and bites that. I like to kind of keep it more realistic looking and not feeding prosthetics as if they're toys. I think that's one of those tools that if you overuse it, it just becomes another toy or piece of equipment.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure.
Same with muzzles. Same with, we talk about that all the time. That
the hidden sleeve, like you mentioned, like after they see it 2 or 3 times, it's like, okay, they kind of pick up on this. It's equipment.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to, if you have
it is hard.
If you have a gnarly dog, like I'm not, hey, just pick a limb,
Hopefully it's that one.
I tend to present a little bit too, just out
sure.
of, self-preservation, right?
And I'm introducing muzzles there too. Muzzle fighting, I should say, there as well.
So what's that look like?
So dogs neutral to the muzzle. Put the muzzle on them, allow some barking or tell them to bark behind the bark fence. And while the dog's barking, I have the handler unhook the back tie. Bark, bark, bark. Door opens up. Decoy does not move. And dog goes forward through the fence where the fence was and hits the decoy. And then it goes right into a typical bark fence, muzzle fighting session where it's, hit, decoy rolls away with prey. Handler comes up, pulls it back a little bit, pops them in, 2 or 3 pops into the bite, and then it's over with.
Eric, I want to hit something because we're seeing this across the nation, especially with Canines United, and even in some of our own groups. What you said about muzzle neutrality, that doesn't mean that when you go to do a search, you strap on the muzzle and the dog's neutral or excited to go do the search. Your dog's not neutral to a muzzle at that point. That's equipment, right? Like if I'm only putting on when they're doing apprehension work, that's just equipment. Muzzle neutrality is as I put it on just like I would put on a collar. The dog treats it as if I just put on a collar. It's walking around life, goes for a jog, does obedience, lays on the cot, does any of these things just like it's a leash or like just like it's a collar or the prong or any of those things. Neutrality means the dog doesn't really know it's there. We have guys that are putting the muzzle on and they're like, yeah, he's really good at putting the muzzle on because he knows that means he's going to go do bite work. Well, that's just the same as presenting a hidden sleeve. Like now it's just equipment. So when you say muzzle neutrality, it's really important, handlers, that you take the time to create neutrality for your dog to the muzzle, because then we get some real scenario work out of a dog that's muzzled because the dog's not taking it as a key to apprehension.
Absolutely. That's huge because, yeah, if it's a cue for aggression, then it's another piece of equipment. So, and making the dogs neutral to muzzles isn't too tough. I think it goes super fast. Put the muzzle on the dog, take him for a jog. We do that as a group. We do in canine school. We do that probably 5 or 6 times, quarter-mile run, nothing long. And next thing you know, because the dogs are moving, they're not messing with the muzzle, they're pretty neutral to it. And then the next thing I do is teach them to search in the muzzle, and I do a search for dad. So they get to use their nose in the muzzle. There's no aggression associated with it. If I'm holding your dog's muzzled, you run away, hide in the woods. Obviously, we have the wind set up so the dog's going to be able to smell you. You call him, he runs in that direction. Now he's got to start using his nose. He finds you, and you just praise him up and have a good time. And then you run off another direction, and we do it again. And the dogs learn to search in the muzzle with no aggression, and they tend to not scratch at it because they're not expecting a bite at the end. So those are the 2 things that I do before I put them behind the bark fence.
And we use bicycles. I'll just get a beach cruiser, throw a dog in a muzzle, and go for a slow ride, and it's great. Like within, like you're saying, either they're paying attention to their feet or they're paying attention to the muzzle, and you can't do both. Mm-hmm. And if you're on a bike ride, it makes it a little easier because I can go faster at my age and my size and my speed. I can be a little brisker on the bike than I am in a jog, and it works out great.
Well, don't get me wrong. I don't run with them. I got a knee replacement and I'm beat up. So
dogs will do that. We're almost to the hour point, and I knew this one was going to go fast.
Yeah, really fast.
I know, it's crazy. Wow. You're doing a lot of seminars out there. You're doing some stuff with Rigney too. I have not seen you naked in the sauna yet, so I don't know if you guys are doing everything together. Justin was just put out a reel the other day, and it's pretty damn close to being naked and sweaty in there. But I watched the whole thing, so it worked.
Gotcha.
Can you let everybody know where they can reach you, what you have coming up next, what's planned for 2026, so people can get out there and learn with you?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to Minnesota in a couple of weeks.
Whoa.
Going to do some bark fence.
It's gonna be cold, man.
February or January. Yeah, we're going ice fishing. So, doing bark fence, doing bungee. I did a hard surface tracking for them back in the summer. It was nice then. But yeah, I got a couple other things coming up in February, Nashville with Justin. I think March I'm taking off, but I got some other stuff throughout the year doing the hard surface tracking classes. I got one in Texas coming up, and but yeah, you can find me on Instagram. So it's just Eric Good Canine, Eric with a K, ERIK, Good, the letter K, number 9. Yeah, if you want to hit me up on that. I've been traveling quite a bit. I'm still working full time as a cop, so I try to only do about one thing a month. So I'm booked up through July, I think.
Are you doing any just bark fence only seminars, or are they usually combined with something else? And then is that like a 2 or 3 day thing?
2 or 3, yeah. And normally if we do a 3-day, we're doing bark fence and bungee. We usually get some more stuff in there.
Got anything planned in California anytime soon?
I just did or booked a tracking seminar in July in the Bay Area.
Oh, nice.
And then I think that's it for California. I was out in California a lot the last year, but I don't think I have anything coming up there.
How many dogs would you have in a group for the bark fence thing?
I typically like about 12 dogs, 12 working dogs and then, unlimited auditors. But in a 2 or 3 day class, we'll get, every dog will get at least 2 or 3 reps a day and doing that. So you get too many and they're not getting the reps.
They don't get the reps.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Well, man, we really appreciate it. It's been fun kind of watching everything that you're doing, blow up, and everybody that we've talked to has only had good things to say about you and the work that you're doing. So you're doing good stuff out there and people appreciate it. And it's been great for us to get a firsthand account of what it looks like. And whenever you're back out in our neck of the woods, if you can let us know, and we'll try and jump in and just see, firsthand what you're doing. And I know we could get some dogs there too that would like to see that process.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I think seeing it firsthand, you really get to appreciate it and see how you can put it into everything you do, and then get rid of it. And the barking goes away. So it's definitely a great tool that's taking our dogs to a whole nother level, and we still maintain very, very nice control during bark fence, during everything. We want super clean outs. We have the ability to verbal out our dogs on the street. That's an option for us that we do from time to time. We can also lift them off. So we're not just making alligators on a leash. We're able to maintain control. And increase. And I really think that increases power. When the dog understands in, they understand out better. When they understand out better, they understand in better. So there's everything kind of works together.
It's kind of like barking, right? Like the best for me, the best way to get a dog quiet is teach it how to bark, right? Because then there's an on switch and an off switch. Otherwise, you just have the dog picking and choosing when it wants to do what it wants to do. So it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, it was really good to hear it firsthand from you. We appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk to us, and wish you the best and hope you stay safe out there.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
In the meantime,
train hard
and be safe.